and the Great Reset and all those things that we hear about, okay? That's happening. And so many forces that operate for the good and for the bad and for control and manipulation. That's what they're doing because they know this. They read the Farmer's Almanac too. Okay. So somebody asked me, they said, tell me about one sorcerer, Danny. Tell me about one sorcerer. I said, well, the only last sorcerers, which is the ability to alter reality, are farmers. And even agri-conglomerates operate on the lunar cycle based on the Farmer's Almanac is an astrology chart. So if all this is happening, David and Elizabeth,
Mm-hmm.
and we get a chance to open up about this since nobody dies and we're on time and in the right place at the right time, what would be your words of wisdom to Kenny's and Corinne's audience?
Well, I guess I'll take it if you want.
I want you to.
It's a very interesting situation for me to be watching the fulfillment of something that has come through in prophecies that I've been studying from 35 different ancient cultures around the world. I first heard about this when I read Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock in 1995 after I had just graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology and a PhD in UFOs because I read 300 books on them in college. And then Graham Hancock, when he came out with Fingerprints of the Gods, it was absolutely groundbreaking. He's one of my great heroes, just like you are, Dannion. And he said in the book, from these two historians, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschen, that there was a work that they had completed, these two historians, called Hamlet's Mill, and that it basically was a cross examination of all of the different cultures in the world that had spiritual traditions that were written down or oral. And they had 35 of them that they put together. And their grand hypothesis was that they all were basically telling you the same prophecy about the future. And the prophecy seems to involve, in the simplest form, a radical spiritualization of life on Earth to such an extreme that the kind of stories that Dannion reports from the afterlife become incredibly commonplace. This is the Jedi Master telekinetic powers, people flying, people being able to become invisible, people bilocating, people manifesting objects out of thin air with their mind. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be doing all this immediately. But if you are a long-term follower and supporter of my work, then you know that I've really been pounding the pavement on these issues for a long time. And all of the different prophecies, whether it's Hindu or Zoroastrian or Celtic, go right down the list of 35. What do they say? That there gets to be a peak period of insanity on the planet. And those shoes are audible, by the way. I'm so OCD. When you start squeaking the leather on the shoe, I totally lose my train of thought.
It's me enjoying the fact that I'm getting exactly what I want out of you. So I have a little tick that comes based on that. I'm getting exactly what I want.
You should cut to him when he's talking.
Oh, that's
Okay.
true. Yeah,
All
there
you
we go.
all you need to hear is this.
If he's talking, people want to see him.
Here, there's
Most
both
the
of you.
time.
There's both of you.
There it is. This is
I'm getting off of him.
He threw me in.
Yeah,
You
I didn't-
understand what happened, everybody? I did not want to be on camera
And
today.
listen,
We were just setting this up tentatively.
and I yelled at
And
him.
this guy
Okay, but
puts
let
me
tell
on the
you
freaking show.
exactly.
It's like, come
And
on.
Ella and Elizabeth also, because listen, everybody, here's where Elizabeth is in the course of what she's doing and help running the Wilcock Foundation and the charitable programs.
That paid for this show.
Yeah, that she has women all over the world following the priestess path tradition, trying to get back to nature, finding those harmonic resonance, finding those value systems and concepts to design your life around. And she has them from all over the world. So coming together today to be with about Kenny and what he's doing is a gift and a pleasure. And I just wanted us all to be able to share that. So back to you shooting Graham Hancock.
Right. It's the people who are following this don't like the tangents, and I apologize for that. It is just a hilarious situation that you only got here like 2 hours ago, and I was tinkering with this set, and all of a sudden he says, "We're going live!" And I got to get dressed up, and it's just a whole situation. But I'm happy to talk about this because it's important, and I do think that the set is, passable. So
Go.
we put up this sound blanket for you. We're all set now.
Okay, so
All right.
Does he sound less echoey now that I did that?
get back
Anyway,
to the legend.
so there's 35 different cultures around the world that gave you the same prophecy, and they talk about a peak period of instability before there is a great change. Now, one of the things I find the most interesting is to study the history of the cabal and how they have spent probably billions of dollars advertising what the Alliance calls the old religion. So when we use the term old religion, it's a nice, convenient way to talk about something that you know what it is and slip by the AI that is now sniffing out everything that you say as you say it. And these videos that we're doing now, we do have to apply principles of digital security to. There are certain keywords that you don't want to utter because then you get flagged and algorithms chase you down. So it's a very interesting dystopian situation. And we could dialogue about this a little bit if you want to.
Yeah, because carnival.
You were living with us for part of the time that the pandemic was at its peak.
Yeah.
So you got to see what it was like being in a densely packed residential area and everybody staying home and watching people when they started to walk again and the fear that they had with the masks and everything. This has been a year that has just kicked us in the butt.
Mm-hmm. And part of it is because it's a cycle, David. And
Right.
part of it is people from the old religion are manipulating it. Like I said, this is chapter 5, box 12, 45 years ago.
Exactly.
Okay, at box 11. And
You got to cut to him if you start.
But what people really have to get the point on is we've chosen to be here at this time because we think this is the most critical time that we can make a difference.
Mhm.
People have to focus on that. So what is a goal make a difference? What is a gratitude? Because by getting people to understand there is a lighter, more wondrous nature about this adventure than trying to scare people into believing that they're going to die when you can't even prove you're even here.
So true. I really look at the manipulation as profound and disturbing. What we're seeing at this time, however, is not at all unexpected.
Right.
And that's what we were getting to, is that this is exactly what the prophecy said. So I was starting to make a point about how the cabal has spent not hundreds of millions of dollars, but billions of dollars advertising the old religion. Now, how could I possibly make a statement that seems so patently absurd and then back it up with proof? How many movies cost $100 million? And how many movies aggressively, sarcastically promote the old religion? Did you see Batman versus Superman? What an incredible dumpster fire that is. When you have a movie in which both Batman and Superman are very aggressively compared to the fallen angel, including iconography of the fallen angel being intercut with them. And the whole plot line is the idea that, well, Superman isn't nice anymore, and Batman isn't really nice anymore. So they're both these kind of angry, evil men fighting each other.
And one of them was raised from the dead. Remember,
That's right.
Superman was raised from the dead. So when you start to look at the plot situations in that, we have a dead person coming back to save the world now.
Right.
Think about that. I mean, I just thought of that, dude. So that's pretty cool.
Well, also, there's a very sarcastic and extremely disparaging view of Christianity and other religions that are burned into these movies as well. And in the case of what we had with Batman versus Superman, Lex Luthor was very obviously acquainted with the old religion's view of the distorted, negative, demonic Jesus Christ, which is the only type that they think exists. They think that Jesus is a demon, a horrible creature. They really do believe that. And it's bizarre because when we get back to the afterlife research, Dannion and many other NDE survivors have consistently documented that it doesn't matter what religion you are or whether you're an atheist, that when you go to the other side, there are absolute standards of conduct that you have to follow. And when you look at it from that perspective, these codes of conduct must be carried through on Earth. And therefore, the cabal must advertise themselves and what they're doing and what they're up to all the time, because they apparently do function within an occult system that has rules. And the rules, if they don't follow the rules, I had high-level whistleblowers that taught me this, people that were working with the Rothschilds, okay, who had defected, telling me that they must tell you what they're doing, or else there are these disruptive influences. They'd be disruptive for them. Disruptive influences that come in and damage their plans, even to the point that they said that if you tried to assassinate someone who hadn't been authorized to be assassinated by these spiritual rules, that not only would it not work, but that the person who ordered the assassination could die. So
and that functions, David, in every methodology that happens right now. What you just described as a rule.
yeah,
You know, you follow the rules and how you do it and what the reasons are and all that kind of stuff. There are strict rules about it in how you execute, how you interact in every form, even how we do executions today. There is that ritual and symbolics. It's amazing. Would you call this Luciferian?
well, we're just going to stick with old religion, but yeah, that's
Because
basically
you made a mistake because it was some cult called the Rockin' Woods instead of you gave it another name.
I don't even know what the heck you just said.
You said Rockefeller, and I said, no, that's not them. Mr. Rockerwoods.
Rock of Woods.
Thought we weren't going to use those terms.
When he reaches for such lame humor and you have to honor him by trying to painfully wince through it and laugh as if it was funny, it's not the best way to use your time as you're watching this show, and I really do apologize.
I will keep going then. Let's go. Get to it.
I'm just screwing around.
You're all
See,
right.
you guys don't understand this. Okay, let's explain something on the wide shot here for a second, everybody. This is actually how we hang out when we're having fun. We bust each other's chops all the time. It doesn't mean that I am disrespecting him, and it doesn't mean that he feels bad.
He's from New York. I mean, come on.
We like to really
Born
hang
and
out.
raised
This is
in
the
New
Dave and
York.
Dan show.
Come on, and it's really comprehensive, and it gets to the point with a lighthearted focus, so you can enjoy the fact that you chose courageously to be here, the same as we did. So you're not alone, and you're not helpless, because we gathered here today. And then there's the Dave and Dan show. So find you together there also, and you'll always find Elizabeth keeping this whole program and the ideologies together.
I don't exactly know how much time we have. It looks like we're at 4:40
We
right
have
now.
20 minutes.
Okay, so I wanted to make a point that I haven't quite delivered yet.
We'll get to it.
Well, we're kind of meandering through this. It's like
It's
a
not
hors
true.
d'oeuvres bar.
You're doing
There's lots of
exactly what I
things
want
to
you
offer.
do.
Okay, so here we go. What we do find out is that the reason why they have to follow these rules is that angelic influences block them if they don't. And those angelic influences to them are evil, but to us would be the good guys, would be positive, benevolent, angelic beings.
Agreed.
And so after 3 years of them urging me, and this is the beings that I have delivering information through my dreams and through synchronicity and through very interesting happenstance situations that far deliver a punch and payload beyond common sense or reason or logic. You must at a certain point collapse the ego when you have enough synchronicity and when you have enough prophetic dreaming. If you start documenting your dreams every day and remembering what they say, you will start to predict the future. And so everything that's happening to us now was anticipated, and I already wrote about it in the book that I just came out with.
Which book?
Well, This is so cheesy, and I apologize.
Don't
But
care.
here we go. This is it. Awakening in the Dream, and we were gonna be shooting later, and he threw me in, so now we're doing this now. But anyway, yes,
Get over it.
this is the first time that I've actually gone through and really talked about the positive side of the story, the angelic beings, how so many different people end up seeing them, whether they call them midwayers or whether they call them elders or whether they call them Anshar. It's the same essential group. And we find out that these benevolent forces have been working behind the scenes, and they are completely time travelers. They have no address in time that they have to stick by. They can go anywhere they want. So they went backwards. Okay, before I say that, let me just install a couple of things first. We have, for the first time in this book, and I've never talked about this before, and I feel like now is a good time. We've taken a variety of different avenues that reveal the same information, some of which are unconventional. This includes the Betty Andreasen or Betty Andreasen Luca material, which actually was the subject of multiple classic groundbreaking UFO books by Dr. Raymond Fowler, who was the author of them, and also one of the principal researchers in doing the hypnotherapy on her. So she ended up having contact experiences that led to dramatic encounters with beings that were wearing robes, and they were a whitish kind of a robe, and they had longish hair for the most part that was usually a lighter color, and they were Caucasian, although there's plenty of other reports that show that these beings do have different racial, all the races on Earth are represented by these beings. So please, let's get rid of this tall whites thing forever. We should not call them that. This is a pejorative term that the people in the secret military establishment came up with, because just like they would call insectoids crickets or grasshoppers or things like this, tall white is not a positive sounding thing. And it turns out now that these angelic beings do have all the different races in them. We know this. So we look at it from these different angles, but what we keep coming back to, whether it's Betty Andreasen or whether it's the very, very interesting book Cosmic Voyage by Dr. Courtney Brown, which actually came out in January 1996. And this book was foundational for me because I read it right before I started reading The Law of One. And then all the things that Dr. Brown was getting from a scientifically controllable remote viewing study, where he's remote viewing things like the pyramids on Mars, and things like the identity of Buddha, and things like these people that in this book, in his book, Cosmic Voyage, they call them the midwayers, okay? You find out when you read the book, and now it's very poignant in today's world, that the people in the military-industrial complex were extremely well aware of these robed beings with the long hair that they called midwayers, was actually the principal term that they used for them, apparently. And again, they considered them potentially disruptive. But when you find out what Dr. Brown is saying about them, it conforms directly with what Betty Andreasen is saying. And then Dr. Brown has a series of remote viewing results in the book. There's like 20 or 30 chapters of different types of remote viewing that he did. Immediately after that, I read The Law of One, and The Law of One is saying exactly the same stuff that Dr. Brown's book did, but gives a lot more detail. And Dr. Brown had no idea that The Law of One existed. That coincidence between those two books and the revelation that these robed beings do exist somewhere, they're in like a spiritual capacity outside of physical reality. They went backwards in time and installed these 35 different prophecies around the world. These robed intelligent beings are time travelers, apparently. They're us from the future. They're human beings from the future that are moving through time to help us on this ascension timeline. So they installed various prophecies in areas like the Iranian, what we would call Iran now, or Persia, which was the Zoroastrian tradition. And in Zoroastrianism, they say that the evil one they call Ahriman is intended to be defeated at the end of the cycle. It's built for that reason. So isn't it strange that these robed beings apparently are directly interfering with our physical reality when necessary? They will stop you from killing someone. They will arrange for you to meet your karma. These beings, this is another thing I talk about in the book that's really, really intense to know, is that these beings do not play around.
Tell me about it. Tell
They
me
do
about
not play
I
around.
ran up on 12 of those suckers.
So,
I ran up on 12 of those suckers, David. You know, these beings that you described, I know them personally.
right.
I've run into
12
them.
of them.
Yeah, okay. I ran into them. I get it, and no, they don't play. But if you gain power and insight, and you gain an awareness about your spiritual identity, that gives you an advantage over others because they're not aware of something that is a truth, like you don't die, and that you operate in here by know what you. There are no physical rules that you think exist. They don't exist. And once you know that, and you know the way you leave here and come back, then you have an advantage, and you live by stricter rules. And like you said, in the military industrial complex, the Nazis were so deep into this kind of stuff till it's ridiculous.
That's true.
Okay, and now we had Operation Paperclip, and all the Nazis came over here. We have all those cultists that's integrated in our space travel, in our intelligence operation, in our CIAs, NSAs, and all those people who came. So when I listen to what you're saying and describing, I know those beings exist, but how they're manifesting and those forces that are operating against them, which I believe this is true. Okay. So
Well-
where is those forces coming from to engage to control and depopulate us, equal to those who are either interfering to show us, like what we're doing in this program and what the Dave and Dan show is about, what we're doing to keep people aware,
Mhm.
aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it. So where do you think that drive comes from? Because we only have like 8 minutes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock. I wanted to funnel this back into the conclusion I wanted to make, and hopefully some of what you asked me will be in there.
It better be.
We'll see. We don't have a whole lot of time, and you threw me in on this. Okay, so the ultimate point that I make in the book is that these beings do reach out to you personally. I had my own encounters with them, which are thoroughly documented in the book, which led to a prolonged amount of telepathic communication. And this is something that I generally do not regard very seriously. Okay? The reason why the law of one does seem to be taken seriously by me is because it has hundreds of things that I was able to scientifically prove in it. And in the case of what happened to Dannion, the near-death experience is absolutely a documented fact. No one can dispute the severity of clinical data proving that everybody has the same experiences and the same types of beings that visit them, which I think really are the same. I think these beings walk between worlds, and in my book, I think I've revealed a lot more about them, that they do get physically involved. And so what I think is going on here is that we have been set up with these prophecies in advance. And the way that the world is going right now is actually leading to a breathtaking exposure of negativity, unlike anything we've ever seen. And so that really does start to get into the I told you so category. We've been saying the same thing for so long. We've been saying mass arrests. We've been saying there's going to come a time where the negative will be so widely exposed that everybody sees it for what it is. And at that point, lots of people start getting arrested all at once. It really does appear that we are right on the brink of this. And in fact, the amount of information that is coming in that's confirming the imminent delivery of these prophecies is so high that I can't even keep up with it. I don't have enough time to watch all the videos I need to watch, to read all the articles I need to read, just to keep up with the speed of legal filings that are being made right now and the results, because we're talking about multiple states, we're talking about governors. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And secretaries of state
Cut back.
and secretaries of state, watch. We are in a revolution. We're in a revolution, and what you and I Elizabeth, what we try to do is add that spiritual context to it, so that they have to expose themselves if you're paying attention. Okay? And the next thing is so important, everybody, to really understand. If you start from that, you do not die. This is not going to happen. And what we're most afraid of is the process that we watch our loved ones go through because of the fact that it's for profit. That hospitals, and not saying they're great doctors and great programs and great studies and great pharmaceutical companies and great homeopathic and allopathic and integrative chiropractic services. I'll just say that, but it's run for a profit. And when something's run for a profit, there's not that spiritual value added to it. We end up where we are. So what we're trying to do and we are intending to do is we realize that you're in the same place as us. And the fact that you don't die makes other stuff just information. And in that information, you gain strength and you in turn reach out to someone who you love or someone you're thinking about that this is what you do. You reach out and you encounter them in some way to make sure they're okay. And you do that and you do it for me and you do it for us. I mean, it is important that we are active as the spiritual light bearers that we are. And so I want to get back to Kenny and in closing, because if there may be a couple of questions and we had talked about it, Kenny, so we have time.
Nobody's going to want to ask questions about all.
But if there is
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple already.
if
I'm
there's
sure
a
there's
if
gonna
there's
be
a
plenty.
question I want to hear that I'd like to
Yeah.
hear it, and let's try to answer them for ever how much time is left.
Well, if they're by text, Elizabeth could read them.
If you put them in the chat,
I like one that
see them.
I see one that I really
So,
like.
Kenny, if you put them in the chat, Elizabeth will be able to see them.
Well, they're in the. I'm going to read one from the chat.
Cut to herself if she reads them too.
Can you hear me? Okay.
She
Magic.
There's a
beautifully
few
does it.
questions. We can't hear you, Kenny, but
Oh.
I can't hear you. I'll give you a couple questions. One is
Well, cut to yourself.
we can actually cut to me looking at the questions here. All right. Well, there's a question about those interesting metallic objects that are falling into Utah and California. If there's
I think
any-
that's a group of people that are doing that just for fun, and there's nothing extraterrestrial or unusual about it. I
Right.
wouldn't get too worried about that one.
right.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Here's a good
It
one.
doesn't have a good intuitive ping on it at all.
Well, the Who put it in perspective
Yeah.
on their album.
Here's a good one from Jeannie. She asks, "How do I help my parents who are struggling?"
Wow.
Okay, number one, Jeannie, what are they struggling with? Is it loneliness? Is it despair? Is it being aggravated with each other? What is the nature of the struggle?
We'll wait while she is with the end of life.
Okay, number one, you have to look at what causes what's happening to them. You get them to talk about what they're afraid of, knowing that that time is coming and everybody just needs more time. The things that are bothering them and the unfinished projects or thought patterns are unresolved relationships, which is usually 98% of the time. It's an unresolved relationship. And it's being able to talk it through. So you get them to talk to you. You take the time and you call them. You don't put them together. You sit them separate and you ask them what is unresolved, what is not done, what relationships are incomplete, because then you're going to get an idea of where they're really coming from and what's really going on in their life. And that's how you do it, because a lot of times when a person hears themselves talking, they find resolution without you doing anything else.
Very well put.
Wonderful. She says, "Thank you." Another good question. Are they giving the globe vaccines, especially focusing on the children, because star seeds are waking up all over the planet and getting special powers? I saw an interview with 2 little boys that were less than 10 years old yesterday that were marked her in star seeds and could astral project.
Okay.
So
I would not. I would not be enthusiastic about any vaccines right now, based on a variety of data that has been promoted by people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Maybe there's not an F in his name. I'm sorry, Robert Kennedy Jr. Who's done an amazing job, as well as Robert De Niro, who has now become one of the untouchables because of the movie that he made, which I'm not even going to say out loud, but it starts with a V. It sounds like you faxed somebody something. Figure out what I'm saying here. Ooh,
Hmm.
yeah, this is a big deal. Okay, so I really would encourage everyone to be aware that if certain world leaders were to say they're going to get injected, it's probably going to be saline solution. I would not do this under any circumstances, and I would not think in any way that a vaccine would activate light body potentials in people or lead to anything positive. That's my personal opinion, and I think just about everybody's got that opinion as well.
Okay,
I
wait, hold on. My personal opinion is much like David's. Anything that you cannot test, and anything that you're exempt from suing them, and anything that carries RNA replicating molecules, especially where that comes from a fetal, then how this vaccine is constructed is completely different from every other vaccine ever used, and how you put it into your system using an RNA. When you do that, you're able to shift and change the basic operating protocols of protein.
It's very frightening.
And then on top of that, I want every congressman and senator to stand in line and take the vaccine, because the vaccine has to be at a certain temperature for a cold, and you only have 5 hours to give X amount of doses per bottle. And at the end of the 5 hours, the depleted left in that bottle is going to be worthless and no good. Okay, so if you're gonna have the government giving you these shots, and this is the other thing, the Pfizer guy came out, one of the Pfizer guys came out and said they were creating part of that vaccine that would create the
You said the
inability,
V word.
part of that
V.
V
Good job.
would create in a female the ability not to produce placenta for a certain period of time.
1 minute left.
So when that scares me, okay, I'm agreeing, but everybody be smart and don't be afraid, and do not let anybody force you into doing anything, because the moment you give up the power of your own health in the hands of whatever you do, that is the greatest mistake that we can make. You will not die. And thanks, Kenny, for having us, and thanks everybody for taking the time to spend a little time with myself, Elizabeth, and David. And please find the Dannion and Dave show.
That's not what it's called. It's
going
called
to
the Dave and Dan show.
Oh, I thought it was Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
Elizabeth,
You gotta-
David.
Gave that one
Edit
to
in
you.
post. We'll get
Yeah.
You're getting slack on me, David.
All right.
It's all good times.
There you go.
Well, that's a good wrap, guys. Thanks.
We can see Ken. I can't hear him.
I don't know why you guys can't
Are
hear
you
me.
talking to us, Ken?
You can't hear me, huh?
For some reason, we can't hear
We
him.
muted you gotta turn the volume up on the side of the computer there. Top right.
Oh, I don't know.
Just do it.
Can't hear me still.